The movie begins with a close-up of a feather floating through the air, carried by the wind across the cityscape of Savannah, eventually landing near Forrest Gump's feet at the bus stop. Forrest picks it up, places it inside his favorite book, Curious George, and then starts talking to a nurse who sits next to him on the bench, waiting for her bus.
Those must be comfortable shoes. I bet if I think about it real hard, I could remember my first pair of shoes. Mama said they'd take me anywhere.
His narration introduces us to Forrest Gump as a child with a condition that affects his spine, causing him to wear leg braces. He has a kind heart and a lower-than-average IQ.
This is normal. Forrest is right here.
Despite this, his mother is determined to give Forrest a normal life and refuses to let his physical limitations or slow intellect hinder his potential.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
This phrase encapsulates the film's and Forrest's approach to life's unpredictable nature.
You ain't nothing but
Forrest's mother affirms that he is no different from anyone else, even fighting for him to attend public school. One of the most significant moments in young Forrest's life is when he meets Jenny on the school bus. No one else wants to let Forrest sit next to them, but Jenny invites him to share her seat.
You can sit here if you want.
I had never seen anything so beautiful in my life. She was like an angel.
Jenny and Forrest quickly become best friends. Jenny is one of the few people who treats him without judgment or pity, and their bond is one of genuine affection and acceptance. The iconic scene where Forrest breaks free from his leg braces occurs when he's being chased by bullies.
Run, Forrest, run! Run, Forrest!
Spurred by the need to flee, Forrest's braces shatter, revealing his incredible ability to run swiftly. This moment signifies Forrest's physical and emotional liberation and becomes a defining aspect of his character.
From that day on, if I was going somewhere, I was running.
Forrest's running ability serves as a motif throughout the film, leading him to numerous life-defining adventures. After his high school graduation, Forrest's ability to run incredibly fast catches the attention of college football scouts.
Now, it used to be, I ran to get where I was going. I never thought it would take me anywhere. And can you believe it? I got to go to college, too.
Forrest's talent does not go unnoticed, and he eventually becomes an All-American, which leads to an invitation to the White House to meet the President of the United States. In the film, Forrest meets President John F. Kennedy. When asked by the president how he feels about being an All-American,
Congratulations. How do you feel?
I gotta pay.
this part of Forrest's life story is depicted with lighthearted humor, showcasing how his simple, straightforward nature leads to unusual and remarkable experiences that a person of his background would not typically encounter. After college, Forrest decides to enlist in the United States Army. His decision seems to be as much an element of chance as any other choice in his life, guided by the simple thought that it was something to do. During basic training, Forrest again demonstrates his ability to follow orders without question. His superiors find his unquestioning obedience and speed in assembling and disassembling his rifle impressive, leading to a somewhat comical representation of Army life as seen through Forrest's eyes. In the service, Forrest meets Benjamin Buford Blue, better known as Bubba, who dreams of being a shrimp boat captain and quickly becomes Forrest's good friend. Bubba shares with Forrest everything there is to know about the shrimp business. Forrest also meets Lieutenant Dan Taylor, who comes from a long line of military men and has strong views on his destiny. Forrest is sent to fight in the Vietnam War, where the realities of combat are sharply contrasted with his perception of simply doing what he's told. During an ambush, Forrest performs the unimaginably brave feat of rescuing many members of his platoon, including Lieutenant Dan, who is critically injured and loses his legs. Despite being wounded himself, Forrest continues to search for Bubba. Forrest finds Bubba, who is fatally wounded. As Bubba dies in Forrest's arms, he talks about their dream of going into the shrimping business together, a promise that Forrest remembers and later fulfills. Forrest's heroism earns him the Medal of Honor, which he receives for his actions in saving his fellow soldiers.
Where were you hit?
In the buttocks.
I'd like to see that.
The war leaves Lieutenant Dan as a double amputee, feeling bitter and cheated of his destiny to die with honor in battle, as his ancestors had. This resentment initially causes a rift between him and Forrest when they reunite later in the film. While recovering from his injuries sustained during the Vietnam War, Forrest is introduced to the game of ping pong in the Army hospital.
No matter what happens, never
ever take your eye off the ball.
Taking to it naturally, he quickly becomes exceptionally skilled at the game, spending all his waking hours practicing. Forrest's abilities earn him a spot on the All-American ping pong team, which travels to China for an exhibition match. This visit coincides with the actual historical event of ping pong diplomacy, where table tennis players from the United States visited China in 1971, marking a thaw in U.S.-China relations. Forrest's visit is portrayed as a critical component of these diplomatic efforts, humorously crediting him with a pivotal role in easing tensions between the two countries. After returning from China, Forrest's expertise and the visibility of the exhibition matches make him a celebrity. He appears on talk shows, including one with John Lennon.
What's China like?
The land of China, people hardly got nothing at all.
No possessions?
They never go to church.
No religion, too?
Some years later, that nice young man from England was on his way home.
Hard to imagine.
Well, it's easy if you try, Dick.
On his way home.
Where his comments inadvertently inspire the lyrics of the song Imagine. During this time, Forrest is reunited with Lieutenant Dan, who has struggled with losing his legs and his purpose post-war. Despite his initial resentment towards Forrest, Lieutenant Dan comes to terms with his new life. After returning from the Vietnam War and enjoying a brief stint as a ping pong celebrity, Forrest decides to honor his promise to his fallen comrade, Bubba. He heads to Bayou La Batterie, Alabama, to start a shrimping business, a dream Bubba had shared with Forrest during their time in the Army. Forrest names the venture Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, in memory of his friend. Initially, Forrest faces significant challenges as a shrimp boat captain. He lacks experience in the shrimping business and fails to catch any shrimp. His endeavors are met with skepticism and ridicule from the local shrimping community, who see him as an outsider and novice. Forrest's former Army lieutenant, Dan Taylor, joins him, despite earlier mocking Forrest's shrimping plans. Lieutenant Dan, now using a wheelchair after losing both legs in the Vietnam War, reluctantly becomes Forrest's first mate. This partnership marks a turning point in both their lives. Despite their rocky start and continued failure to catch shrimp, Forrest's unyielding optimism and Dan's growing acceptance of his fate bond them closer.
Where the hell's this God of yours?
Right then, God showed up.
Forrest and Lieutenant Dan's luck changes when a hurricane hits the Gulf Coast. They weather the storm out at sea, and their shrimp boat, Jenny, named after Forrest's childhood love, is the only one to survive the hurricane in the area. This disaster ironically proves to be a boon, eliminating competition and leaving the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company as the sole shrimping operation in the area. Following the hurricane, Forrest's business flourishes, finding a bountiful harvest of shrimp. With their successful catch, the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company becomes a huge success, making Forrest a wealthy man. The success of the shrimping business and Forrest's unwavering friendship positively impact Lieutenant Dan. He comes to terms with his disability and his past, finding peace within himself. His journey with Forrest leads to a considerable transformation in his attitude toward life. Forrest returns home to Greenbow, Alabama, when he learns that his mother, Mrs. Gump, is sick. Mrs. Gump imparts her final life lessons to Forrest, encapsulating the film's themes of destiny and the metaphor of life.
Death is just a part of life. I was destined to be your mama. I did the best I could. You have to do the best with what God gave you.
What's my destiny, Mom?
You're gonna have to figure that out for yourself. Life is a box of chocolates, Forrest. You never know what you're gonna get.
Forrest's mother eventually succumbs to her illness. After a fortuitous investment made by Lieutenant Dan in Apple Computer, Forrest finds that he has become a multimillionaire.
He got me invested in some kind of fruit company.
Forrest uses his wealth for good, notably by donating to the church and to the Bayou La Batterie Fishing Hospital. Staying true to his word and displaying unwavering loyalty, Forrest gives Bubba's family a share of the profits from the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. This act changes their lives dramatically, as, despite his wealth, Forrest opts to live a simple life. He is seen mowing the lawn of the high school football field, uninterested in altering his lifestyle just because he has more money. Struck by an unseen impulse and seemingly without a direct purpose, Forrest steps out of his front porch in Alabama and starts running. Initially, he has no particular destination in mind. His run is driven by an instinctive need, a deep-seated response to life's complexities and losses. Forrest traverses the picturesque landscapes of America, his solitary figure becoming a familiar spectacle against the vast and diverse backdrops of the country. With each step, he unintentionally charms the American public, his endurance resonating deeply with people seeking meaning and direction in their own lives. His fame growing with every mile, Some begin to follow him, looking for enlightenment, though Forrest claims to offer none. His image is printed on t-shirts, his path followed by news helicopters, and his journey dissected for deeper meaning. His silent perseverance speaks volumes, turning him into a symbol of tenacity and resolve. After running across the country multiple times for over 3 years, Forrest stops, turns to the crowd.
Quiet, he's gonna say something.
I'm pretty tired. I think I'll go home now.
With those words, the monumental journey ends, leaving his followers puzzled. After the epic running odyssey, Forrest returns to a quiet life in Greenbow, Alabama. His celebrity status from the run fades away, but the wisdom he's gained during his long periods of reflection stays with him. Jenny, the childhood friend who has periodically crossed paths with Forrest throughout his life, comes back into his life unexpectedly, creating an opportunity for them to reconnect. Jenny and Forrest marry in a heartfelt ceremony, surrounded by friends, including Lieutenant Dan, who has made peace with his destiny and is now sporting prosthetic limbs and engaged to be married. Their union represents a culmination of the love that has persisted throughout the hurdles they both faced. Forrest learns that he has a son, Forrest Jr., with Jenny. With the same protective and genuine love he has always exhibited, Forrest embraces the role of a father wholeheartedly. Tragedy strikes when Jenny falls ill, her sickness implied to be due to a virus, hinting at the AIDS epidemic of the time. Her untimely death leaves Forrest as a single parent, faced with the prospect of raising their son alone. Forrest begins a new chapter as a dedicated father to Forrest Jr., embodying the unconditional love and values instilled by his own mother. The film ends where it began, at the bus stop, with Forrest waiting with his son for the school bus, feather in hand. The feather from the opening sequence returns, symbolically lifted into the air by a breeze, signifying the cycles of life and the gentle yet unpredictable nature of destiny, much like the feather's path, guided by the winds of chance.